Hi, I'm Amy Gaffney. I'm one of the educational consultants and a speech language pathologist with the Indiana Resource Center for Autism. And in this video, we're going to talk about communication, some ways that we communicate, and I'm going to give you some tips to help you better communicate with your students. To start off with, what is communication? At a very basic level, communication is exchanging information between two people. And we do that in a lot of different ways. We communicate using speech, which is verbal communication, but we also use our hands sometimes to talk. We make gestures. That's all called nonverbal communication. We can use our body language when we have our arms crossed and maybe we're communicating that we're not in a very good mood. Through our behavior, that communicates how we're feeling, if we're excited or if we're angry. But then there's some other things that you might, or other ways that you might see students communicating in schools that I want you to be aware of. So we can also use objects to communicate. So if I use my cup and pair that with the gesture of holding it up to you and you see that it's empty, that might mean that I would like some more to drink. We also can use pictures to communicate things, our thoughts and our ideas. We can use sign language to communicate. And then we can also use something called AAC, or alternative augmented communication, which is a lot of people call it a communication device. This might be an iPad or it might be a dedicated device just for communication. So let's break down a few of those different ways that you might be communicating with students. Picture communication is one way that we can communicate with younger children, especially, but also people who may have, for some reason, they are either difficult to understand when they're talking, as far as they may have a severe speech impairment, or they may be nonverbal. They may not be a speaker, but they certainly have things they want to communicate to us. So we can use pictures. And oftentimes that might look like using a choice board, such as maybe during snack time. You see up at the left corner, there is a choice board for like a menu of items for snack. If they want an apple, or they want some fish crackers, or they want pretzels, they can give you that picture, and that is a way to communicate what I would like to eat. We can also communicate using pictures for directions. And this is a way that we are actually communicating information to the student instead of having the student just communicate with us. So in that picture at the bottom there, it says, say hi to your partner. And then you're going to talk with each other. You're going to color, you're going to cut, you're going to glue, you're going to put your items in a bag. So those are all picture directions that communicate to a person what they're supposed to be doing. And then finally, on the right, on that blue sheet, there's a couple of ways that those pictures can be used for communication. So it might be that a student needs a prompt and needs some help remembering what questions to ask. So maybe that you just show them that sentence that's typed out, do you want to watch blank? Or they can ask someone to initiate, hey, do you want to listen to some music? Do you want to watch this movie? But it's also a way for us to allow them to communicate back to us. So we could say, do you want to watch, and then they, Iron Man, or do you want to watch or listen to certain music? And we can have some choices for them. So we can use pictures in a lot of different ways for students to communicate to us and for us as teachers to communicate to our students. Then the next thing is the AAC device, or a communication device. So like I said, this is oftentimes looks like an iPad nowadays. But what I want to point out is that is two things that are really important when you're working with a student who has a communication device. First of all, we as teachers and assistants in the classroom, we need to be modeling the use of these communication devices for the students so that they can see that this is their voice and this is what they are going to use. This is the mode of communication that they are going to use to tell us things and to tell their friends things. So we want to also be using it. So when I might say something verbally, I may also type it in on the communication device to show them how to answer that question or how to ask a question. We want to show them where those choices are on their board. So make sure that you are comfortable using those communication devices and that you are also modeling for your students. And then the second thing that's really important when we use a communication device is making sure that we've taught the person how to get our attention first. Because remember, to communicate, it has to be two-way exchange. And so if I'm sitting at my desk and I'm hitting a button that says, I want apples, I want apples, I want apples, but I'm not directing it to anybody. I'm just kind of saying it out putting it out into the universe and hoping that somebody is going to come and respond to me. That's really not true two-way communication. That's not what we want to teach the kids to do. We want them to learn to go and get us. So maybe we put a little card on the edge of that device and it says, touch your shoulder. Or tap your arm. We want to make sure maybe they get our attention first so that look at the person. We want to add that step in there to make sure that they are directing their communication to a particular person. And then you can look at them. And if they say, if they come over and tap your arm and you look at them, then they can push the I want apples. And maybe we add a name of someone on there. Mary, I want apples. Melissa, I need help. Amy, can you come over here, please? This is how they can call us over if they need something. So those are some maybe higher level communication tasks that we might be practicing, but those are really, really important to make sure that if this is going to be a lifelong communication device user, that they are able to do all of the functions, pardon me, that they need to be able to do in order to communicate all of their thoughts and ideas. The next is object communication. Again, this may be one that you aren't too familiar with, but there are times when either we don't have a picture available or we have someone who is still beginning to learn and understand what those pictures and icons represent and what they mean. And so sometimes it's just best to use the object. So oftentimes people know that this cup represents something to drink. So if it's snack time and it's time to get a drink, I might give this cup to someone and that tells them that it's snack time and it's time to go get something to drink. Or like I had mentioned earlier, they might come to me and give it to me. And this is their way of telling me that they want something to drink. So if you've got a student who you need to tell them it's time to take a restroom break, maybe that roll of toilet paper or just the cardboard center is the object because they realize that goes with the bathroom. And so we must be going to that place. Sometimes for kids with, for an example, snack or something, they need the actual object to know what those choices represent. They're not ready for those icon pictures yet. So we might have the actual object or the actual wrapper that we're going to use for them as part of their communication board. And then like if you're going out to recess at the bottom picture, you can line up the items that you're going to be using and really show the kids, we're going to be playing with bubbles first, and then we're going to play catch with this ball. And then we're going to go in and get a drink for snack time, or maybe the cup represents time to go to get a snack. So we can use objects to communicate with other people. Don't forget about behavior. Behavior is communication. It's communicating, I'm excited. A person's behavior can communicate, I'm super bored, I'm angry. And so we all have all the feelings all day long. We're going to feel fear, anxiety, anger, joy, sadness, disgust. Those are natural that's just all a part of our day. So it's okay to feel all the feelings, but we have to learn how to express those feelings in the appropriate way. And so sometimes students who don't have the words or the language to communicate, I am overwhelmed, I am stressed out, might just push the papers off their desk, throw their pencil, break their pencil. They may do something that's a behavior that is going to communicate how they are feeling. I wanted to talk about the two types of language because I think this can help people really understand where some of the breakdown in communication can occur. So receptive language is the ability to understand words, sentences, and meaning of what others say or what we read. So some examples of a student having difficulties with receptive language might be a student having difficulty following directions, understanding those WH questions, who, what, where, when, why, or understanding positional words. So they may not be looking where you expected them to look for something. So really receptive language is that comprehension. It's understanding what you're saying. And so you might be working with students who have receptive language issues or challenges, and you're going to want to know what types of language they are struggling with. And then there's expressive language. This is the other side of it. This is what we use to put our thoughts into words or sentences, and to make sure that they make sense. It's grammatically accurate. It's how we express our thoughts and feelings. So examples of that would be the vocabulary that we use, how we describe something, how we're able to answer a question with a complete thought. And so we have lots of different ways that we express ourselves. So expressive language doesn't just mean verbal speech. It could mean I'm expressing myself through my AAC device. I'm expressing myself through using pictures. I'm expressing myself through written words and written sentences. So a student who has a language impairment that you might be working with could have difficulty with their receptive language or their expressive language, or both. So some tips, if you are working with a child and you know that, or you suspect even that they might have a language impairment, you want to give extra time for that student to be able to express their thoughts. They may start over a couple of times, or they may just need a little bit more time to get out all their ideas, get out all that vocabulary to make sure that they're telling you all the things that they want to tell you. And then if they're also having challenges either understanding you or you're having difficulty understanding them, sometimes you might want to draw a picture or use some kind of visual support to offer some language support for the both of you. And then always ask the teacher or ask the speech therapist at your school for advice on how you can better communicate with that student. You also need to consider a student's processing speed. So processing speed is the time that people need to take in and make sense and then respond to information. So you can have a language impairment and you may have some processing speed challenges, but you can have processing speed challenges and not have a language impairment. You don't have a problem understanding what someone is saying, or you may not have a problem even getting it out. It just might take you a little bit longer to process it. It might take you a little bit longer to take it all in, but you're going to understand it. You're going to get there. So if you see students who need more time to process information, you need to give them that extra time. Slow things down. Ask one question at a time. Break it down into smaller chunks. So maybe it's, instead of giving them all 3 directions at one time, give them one direction at a time. Give them one word to write down at a time versus giving them 5 words or 10 words quickly. These are students who are going to need more time to think about what you're saying. And so try not to repeat yourself right away if they're not answering you very quickly, because this is confusing for people who are having challenges with their processing speed. It's almost as if you're starting over every time you say the same thing, because then they have to think about, what did I just hear? Where am I? They get lost in the process. So let's make sure that we aren't repeating ourselves too close together. And then if you do find that you need to repeat yourself a couple of times because you feel like they're not understanding what you're saying, you might need to try a different way of giving them that information. So use that visual support. Write a list of those things down, of the directions that you need to give, and see if that can help for more success to happen, because you're giving the student other tools and other ways to process the ideas that you're communicating to them. For social communication, this is a big area that we all support our students with. So some students might have challenges with asking appropriate questions, or like, is it a good time to ask this question? Understanding those nonverbal cues like body language, facial expressions, eye gaze, tone of voice. They may not pick up on that stern look that you're giving them, or that look that says, this is not a good time to ask the teacher a question. They might not use the right tone of voice for the right setting. So I have some students who, they're in the library, but it's hard for them to manage how loud their voice is. They may use phrases that don't necessarily make sense. So this happens, and sometimes I hear this in some middle schoolers or high schoolers who are having some communication challenges. They might say, "Oh, I was way out," instead of saying, "Oh, I was way off." So if you hear some little things that might mean that they have a little bit of difficulty with some language, if they're saying some of those phrases a little oddly, it can be very difficult to make friends and play with your peers if you often don't know what to say or what to do in social situations. So that's why these skills must be directly taught, and it's very important that we work on social communication with our students. Having conversations is another big area that you can really support students with. So if you have a student who has a challenge, or you are asked to do some just offer support throughout the day for students, you might want to think about, how do they initiate conversation, or am I always asking them? So sometimes I give a pause. And it can be hard for kids to have that uncomfortable silence. And so this is an opportunity. We want to give them opportunities to initiate some conversation with us. See if they say, "Mrs. Gaffney, what did you do this weekend?" But some kids have difficulty staying on topic, and we might need to give gentle reminders about, well, we're talking about math right now, or we're talking about what game Sally played in this weekend. So we're going to talk about social studies in a little bit. Let's let Sally finish what she was telling us. They might have difficulty taking turns in conversation, difficulty making comments. So you might need to prompt them a little bit more to say, what do you think about that? Do you have a favorite TV show that you like to watch on, Monday evenings or something? Responding to those cues of changing topic. Sometimes we work with kids that they don't get it when people are done talking about Star Wars, that they've kind of told us the same story over and over again, and that's enough. So they need help reading all that body language, because that's going to be really impactful when they're talking with their peers. Being able to end a conversation appropriately is very important. And then, because of all of these challenges, some students may participate very little in conversations. So I always get worried when I hear that one student that I know has some language difficulties and communication difficulties is the quiet one sitting over in the corner, because that means that they are not getting a lot of practice, which they need with communication and conversation with their friends. And it might mean that they're feeling uncomfortable. So watch out for the quiet ones, because sometimes we need to give them a little bit more support, or more support than what we realize that they need. And finally, say what you mean. Sarcasm can be hard for some students to understand. So we want to make sure that we're being clear. You know the student well enough to know when it's a good time to be joking around. Some students may have difficulty understand subtle meanings of what is said. So we want to be clear with our expectations. So instead of saying, "Remember to raise your hand," or we want to say, "Remember to raise your hand and wait quietly for the teacher to call on you today," instead of saying, "Let's not have a repeat of yesterday," because our student may not know what we're talking about. And then we might get frustrated because they're not meeting those expectations that we set. So we need to be very clear that we tell them and we say what we mean, and what our expectations are, so that we can communicate clearly. Thank you all for what you do to support students' communications. And I wish you well, and hope this gives you some things to think about as we talk our way through the days. Best wishes.